Grace here. Loretta went to visit her sister in Tampa. 2 weeks. Left her house keys with her daughter. Just in case. Came back to a "sold" sign on the lawn and strangers measuring her living room for new curtains. Her own daughter. Let that sink in.
I stood there on my own driveway with a suitcase in one hand and my purse in the other, staring at a sign that had no business being in my yard. Red and white. Sold in big letters. Underneath, smaller print. Another happy transaction by Lakeside Realty. Happy for who, I wondered. The key didn't fit. I tried it 3 times, turning it this way and that, thinking maybe my hands were just tired from the flight. But the lock was different. Shiny brass, brand new, the kind that costs extra because it looks expensive. My old lock had a scratch on the plate where Walter accidentally hit it with the ladder back in '94. This one had no scratches at all. Through the front window, I saw movement. A young woman with a ponytail holding a tape measure against my living room wall. Behind her, a man in a polo shirt was pointing at the ceiling, probably talking about the light fixture Walter installed himself. The one with the little crystals I picked out at that antique store in Savannah. My geraniums were sitting by the trash cans. 14 pots. I'd been growing them for 11 years, repotting them every spring, bringing them inside when the frost came. Someone had moved them to the curb like they were garbage waiting for pickup. She sold the rug right out from under my feet, while I was standing on it. Well, not standing. I was eating shrimp salad at my sister's condo in Tampa. But you get the point. I pulled out my phone and called Brenda, my daughter, the one I gave the spare key to. Just in case something happens while you're gone, Mom. She picked up on the second ring. Mom! You're back early. Her voice was bright, cheerful, the way people sound when they're about to deliver bad news and hope the packaging will distract you. Brenda, I said, there's a sold sign on my lawn. There are people inside my house. My key doesn't work. Silence. 1 beat. 2. Mom, I was going to call you tonight. I found you a really nice place. Assisted living, but modern, They have activities. Bingo on Tuesdays. You always liked bingo. I haven't played bingo since 1987. I don't even like bingo. But Brenda has always had a habit of remembering a version of me that's easier to manage than the real one. I didn't agree to sell my house, Brenda. Mom, you're 74. You don't need a house this big. It's too much for you. The yard, the maintenance, the stairs. What if you fall? Remember when Mrs. Patterson fell and nobody found her for 3 days? I'm just looking out for you. I watched through the window as the young woman ran her tape measure along my bookshelf, the one that holds Walter's fishing trophies and the photo albums I haven't opened in years because some memories are better left sitting on a shelf than spread out on a table. Kevin and I talked about it, Brenda continued. His business hasn't been doing well. We needed to make some decisions. And honestly, Mom, that house is just sitting there. It's not doing anyone any good. It's doing me good, I said. I live in it. You were in Tampa. For 2 weeks, Brenda. 2 weeks. I wasn't dead. She made a sound, something between a sigh and a laugh. You're being dramatic. Look, the new owners are lovely people. Young couple, just married. They're going to take really good care of the place, and I found you a room at Sunset Pines. It's only 20 minutes from our house. We can visit all the time. The man in the polo shirt opened my front door and stepped onto the porch. He looked at me standing there with my suitcase, and his face went through about 4 expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, alarm, and then something that looked a lot like guilt. Ma'am? He said. Can I help you? This is my house, I told him. I'm Loretta Harper. I've lived here for 41 years. He looked at the sold sign, then back at me. The seller said, I mean, the paperwork. She said her mother had moved to assisted living, that the house was empty. From the phone, Brenda's voice. Mom? Mom, who are you talking to? The people who think they bought my house, I said, and then I hung up. The young man's wife had come to the door by now, standing behind him with her arms crossed. Not aggressive, just uncertain. They looked like nice people, the kind who bring casseroles to new neighbors and pick up litter on their morning walks. There's been a mistake, I said. I didn't sell this house. I didn't sign anything. I was visiting my sister in Florida. We have the deed, the wife said quietly. We went through the whole process. Title search, inspection, everything. It's all legal. It's not legal if someone forged my signature. They looked at each other. That look couples exchange when they're realizing the dream they just paid for might be sitting on a cracked foundation. I didn't have the energy to stand there explaining. My hip was aching from the flight, and the Tampa heat had left me drained in a way that 2 weeks of rest was supposed to fix. I walked around the side of the house toward the garage. The side door was still the same. They hadn't changed that lock yet. I punched in the code, 1952, the year Walter was born, and the door clicked open. Inside, everything was where I'd left it. The shelves of paint cans, the old croquet set we never use, Walter's workbench, still covered with tools I couldn't name if you paid me. And in the corner, hanging on the wall bracket he built himself, was the chainsaw. Husqvarna, 1987. He bought it the year the old oak in the backyard came down during that ice storm. We're not paying someone $500 to cut up a tree, he said. I'll do it myself. And he did. Took him 3 weekends, but he did it. After he died, I kept maintaining that chainsaw. Every spring I'd change the oil, check the chain, clean the air filter. The guys at the hardware store thought I was crazy. Mrs. Harper, you planning to fell some timber? They'd joke. I'd just smile and tell them a good tool deserves good care. I hadn't used it in years, but I knew it would start. That girl thought I was already in the ground. I wasn't even cold yet. I took the chainsaw off the bracket and carried it out to the driveway. The young couple was still standing on my porch, watching me with expressions that had moved past uncertainty into something approaching fear. I set the chainsaw on the concrete, checked the fuel, still half a tank from the last time I'd run it, and pulled the cord. It took 2 tries. Then that beautiful, terrible roar filled the air, echoing off the houses, rattling the windows. I let it run, not revving it, just letting it idle there on my driveway, loud enough to wake the dead. Loud enough to wake the whole neighborhood. I wasn't going to cut anything. I'm 74 years old. I'm not going to attack anyone with a power tool. But I needed someone to hear me. I needed someone to pay attention. And in my experience, nothing gets attention quite like an unexpected noise. There's something about the sound of a chainsaw that cuts right through everything else. It's not like a car horn or a dog barking or even a gunshot. It's primal, almost animal. The roar of teeth biting into air, hungry for something to cut. People don't ignore that sound. They can't. I stood there on my driveway, 74 years old in my travel clothes, holding a chainsaw that weighed almost as much as my suitcase, and I let it run, not revving it, not waving it around like some lunatic in a horror movie, just holding it steady, letting it speak for me. The young couple on the porch had backed up against the front door, their faces pale. I felt bad about that. They didn't know they'd bought a stolen house. They were just 2 people in love trying to start their life together, and they'd walked into the middle of my family's disaster. But I couldn't worry about their feelings right now. I had my own feelings to deal with, Mary Chen, from 3 doors down, was the first to appear, her phone already in her hand. She stood at the edge of her lawn, staring at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had? Maybe losing your mind is the only reasonable response when your own child sells your house out from under you. "Loretta?" Mary called out. "Loretta, are you okay?" I killed the engine. The silence that followed felt almost as loud as the chainsaw. "No, Mary," I said. "I'm not okay. But I will be." I could hear sirens in the distance. Someone had called 911. Good. That was exactly what I wanted. Let me tell you something about my daughter. Brenda was a difficult baby. Colicky, they called it back then. She'd scream for hours, and nothing would soothe her except being walked around the house in a specific pattern. Living room, kitchen, hallway, bedroom, back to living room. I walked that pattern so many times I wore a path in the carpet. Walter used to joke that we should just put a track in the floor and let her ride around on a little cart. She grew into a difficult child, then a difficult teenager, then a difficult adult. Not mean, not cruel, just difficult. Everything was always slightly wrong. The food was too cold or too hot. The gift was almost right, but not quite. The vacation was nice, but would have been better somewhere else. I spent 49 years trying to make Brenda happy, and I don't think I succeeded more than a handful of times. She was smart, though. I'll give her that. Top of her class in high school, scholarship to state college, graduated with honors. She could have done anything. Doctor, lawyer, CEO of some big company. Instead, she drifted from job to job, always convinced that the next one would be better, that her current boss didn't appreciate her talents, that she was destined for something bigger. I paid for a lot of those transitions. Between jobs, between apartments, between lives. Every time she fell, I was there to catch her. Every time she needed money, I wrote a check. I told myself that's what mothers do. We help. We support. We give our children soft landings even when they keep jumping off cliffs. When she married Kevin, I thought maybe she'd found someone who could handle her. Kevin was calm, steady, the kind of man who agreed with everything she said and then quietly did what he wanted anyway. They seemed to balance each other out. But Kevin had a problem I didn't see at first. He wanted things. Big things. A boat, a vacation house, a business of his own. And he wanted them now, not later, not when he could afford them. He'd gotten himself into trouble more than once with credit cards and loans, and Brenda, for all her faults, had always bailed him out. With what money, I used to wonder. They both had decent jobs, but not the kind that pay for boats and vacation houses. Now I knew where the money was supposed to come from. 3 years ago, Brenda asked me to sign a power of attorney. Just in case something happens to you, Mom, if you're in the hospital and can't sign checks, or if there's an emergency with the house, it's just a safety net. Everyone does it. I trusted her. She's my daughter. You don't raise a child for 18 years, watch her graduate college, walk her down the aisle, hold her hand when she miscarried her first pregnancy. You don't do all that and then assume she's going to rob you. Trust doesn't work that way, or at least I thought it didn't. I signed the papers in her kitchen at the same table where we'd had Thanksgiving dinner the year before. Kevin made some joke about me not needing to worry about anything anymore. "We've got you covered, Loretta," he said, pouring me more wine. "You just focus on enjoying your retirement." Enjoying my retirement. I'd spent 38 years as a nurse, night shifts, double shifts, holidays, weekends. I'd held more hands in the last moments of life than I could count. I'd cleaned wounds and emptied bedpans and talked more than one young doctor out of quitting during their first year. When I retired, I wanted exactly one thing: to sit on my own porch, drink my own coffee, and watch my own garden grow. That house wasn't just a house. It was proof that I'd done something with my life. Walter and I bought it in 1983 with money we'd saved for 7 years, living in a 2-room apartment with a bathroom down the hall. We paid off the mortgage in 2001. I remember the day we burned the papers in the backyard, dancing around the fire like idiots while the neighbors watched and probably thought we'd lost our minds. After Walter died, people kept asking me if I was going to sell. "It's too big for one person," they said. "You could get a nice condo, something easier to manage." But easier wasn't what I wanted. I wanted the house where my husband had lived, where my daughter had grown up, where every room held a memory I wasn't ready to let go of. Now someone else was measuring those rooms for new curtains. The sheriff's car pulled up about 10 minutes after I'd turned off the chainsaw. I recognized it before I saw who was inside. The same make and model they'd been driving since Dale Hutchins took over as sheriff 15 years ago. He wasn't one for change, Dale. Same car, same uniform, same haircut he'd had since the 80s. He got out slowly, the way cops do when they're not sure what they're walking into. His hand wasn't on his gun, but it was close. Mary Chen was still standing at the edge of her lawn, and I could see faces in windows up and down the street. Nothing like a chainsaw and a police car to bring out the curiosity in people. "Loretta," Dale said, walking toward me, "you want to tell me what's going on here?" I'd known Dale Hutchins for 30 years. Back when he was just a patrol officer, fresh out of the academy, his partner got stabbed during a domestic call gone wrong. I was the nurse who stitched him up in the ER, while Dale sat in the waiting room, white as a sheet, convinced his partner was going to die. He didn't die. He retired 5 years later with a full pension and a scar that made for a good story at barbecues. "Dale," I said, "my daughter sold my house while I was in Tampa, forged my signature on the deed. I need you to get these people out and arrest her for forgery." He looked at me for a long moment, then at the chainsaw on the ground, then at the young couple still huddled on the porch, probably wondering if they'd just bought the most expensive mistake of their lives. "That's a serious accusation, Loretta. It's a serious crime." He scratched the back of his neck, a habit he'd had since I first met him. "You got any proof?" I reached into my purse and pulled out the folder I'd grabbed from my carry-on bag. Inside was the deed, the one Brenda had helpfully sent me a copy of in an email 3 days ago. Subject line, "Good news. Everything's handled." I'd printed it out at Janet's house in Tampa, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hit the right buttons. "This is supposed to be my signature," I said, pointing to the bottom of the page. "I've known you 30 years, Dale. You've seen my handwriting on your Christmas cards every December. Look at this and tell me I wrote it." He took the paper, held it at arm's length the way people do when they need reading glasses, but won't admit it. His eyebrows went up, then down, then up again. "This doesn't look right," he said quietly. "It's not right. It's forgery." He pulled out his radio and said something I couldn't quite hear. Then he looked at the young couple on the porch. "Folks, I'm going to need you to step outside for a bit. We've got a situation here that needs sorting out." The husband started to protest. Something about their rights, their contract, all the money they'd put down. But his wife put a hand on his arm and shook her head. They walked down the porch steps and stood on the lawn, close together, like two people who'd just realized the ground under their feet wasn't as solid as they thought. Dale made a few more calls. I stood there with my chainsaw at my feet, watching my house like it might disappear if I looked away. After about 20 minutes, another car pulled up. Not a police car, but a sedan with county plates. A woman got out, carrying a briefcase. "This is Sandra Vaughn," Dale said. "She's with the county recorder's office. She's going to take a look at the paperwork." Sandra was all business. She took the deed, compared it to something on her tablet, made a phone call, took some notes. The whole time, I could feel my heart beating in my chest like it was trying to escape. Finally, she looked up. The notary who witnessed this signature, she said, had his license revoked 2 years ago. He's not authorized to notarize anything. This document is invalid on its face. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. And the signature? Dale asked. Sandra looked at me. Ma'am, do you have any other documents with your signature? Driver's license, anything? I dug through my purse and found my checkbook. I handed it over. She compared the signatures, holding them up to the light, tilting them this way and that. This isn't even close, she said. The person who forged this didn't even try to match the handwriting. They just scrawled something that looked vaguely like a signature.
Let me pause for a second. Brenda forged her own mother's signature, used a notary whose license had been revoked 2 years ago, pocketed $340,000. And when Loretta called her from that driveway, standing there with her suitcase, you know what Brenda said? Mom, you're 74. You don't need a house that big. Like she was doing her a favor. Her own mother. Let that sink in.
Dale nodded slowly. Then he turned to me. Loretta, I'm going to need you to come down to the station and file an official report, and I'm going to need your daughter's address. The young couple was standing on my lawn, listening to all of this with expressions that shifted between relief and horror. Relief that they weren't the bad guys in this story. Horror that they'd just paid $340,000 for a house they might not be able to keep. What about us? The husband asked. We did everything right. We went through the proper channels. We have a contract. Dale looked at him with something like sympathy. Son, you have a contract with someone who didn't own what she was selling. That's not your fault, but it's not Mrs. Harper's fault either. You're going to need to talk to a lawyer. The wife started to cry. Not loud, just quiet tears running down her face while her husband put his arm around her. I felt bad for them. I really did. They were just 2 young people trying to start their life together, and they'd gotten caught up in my daughter's scheme without even knowing it. I'm sorry, I said to them. This isn't your fault, and I hope you get your money back. The husband looked at me like he wasn't sure whether to thank me or yell at me. He settled for nodding once, stiffly, and leading his wife toward their car. Dale drove me to the station himself. On the way, I called Marcus. Marcus is my grandson, Brenda's son. 26 years old, works at a nonprofit downtown doing something with computers that I don't entirely understand. He's nothing like his mother. Quiet, thoughtful, the kind of person who sends thank you cards and remembers birthdays without being reminded. Grandma? He answered. Are you back from Tampa? How was Aunt Janet? Marcus, I need to tell you something. Your mother sold my house while I was gone, forged my signature on the deed. The sheriff is about to arrest her. Silence. Then, what? I'm on my way to the station now to file a report. I wanted you to hear it from me first. More silence. I could hear him breathing, processing, trying to make sense of words that didn't fit together in any reasonable order. Grandma, I didn't know. She told me you'd agreed to move into assisted living. She said you were happy about it, that the house was too much for you. I believed her. I'm so sorry. I should have called you. I should have checked. I know, baby. It's not your fault. Your mother is very good at making lies sound like the truth. What can I do? Do you need anything? Should I come to the station? No. Stay where you are. This is between me and your mother now. But Marcus, when this is over, come see me. Sunday. I'll make pot roast. I'll be there, he said. His voice was thick, like he was trying not to cry. I love you, Grandma. I love you too. I hung up and looked out the window at the town I'd lived in for 41 years. The same streets, the same houses, the same trees I'd watched grow from saplings to shade makers. Nothing had changed, and everything had changed. Dale glanced at me from the driver's seat. You doing okay? No, I said honestly, but I will be. We rode in silence for a while. Dale wasn't the type to fill quiet with meaningless chatter, and I appreciated that. Some people think silence is awkward, something to be avoided. But when you've lived as long as I have, you learn that silence can be a kindness. It gives you room to think without having to perform for anyone. You know, Dale said finally, I've been sheriff here for 15 years. Seen a lot of things. Domestic disputes, robberies, accidents, but family stuff. That's always the hardest. Strangers hurting each other, that's one thing. But when it's your own blood? He shook his head. That cuts different. It does. For what it's worth, Loretta, I'm sorry this happened to you. You don't deserve it. Nobody does, but especially not you. I remember when Marie was sick, you were the one who made sure she got the good pain medication, the kind that actually worked. You didn't have to do that. A lot of nurses wouldn't have bothered. I'd almost forgotten about Marie. Dale's wife, who died of pancreatic cancer 8 years ago. I'd worked the oncology floor for a few years before I retired, and I remembered her. Quiet, dignified, determined not to complain even when the pain was eating her alive. I'd pulled some strings to get her into a better treatment program, called in favors from doctors I'd worked with over the years. She was a good woman, I said. She deserved to be comfortable. She was, and that meant everything to me. He turned onto the main road, the station coming into view. So if there's anything I can do to help you through this, anything at all, you let me know. I've got contacts in the DA's office, the county recorder, the title company. We'll get this sorted out. Thank you, Dale. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you're back in your house, drinking coffee on your own porch. I almost smiled at that. Almost. At the station, I spent 2 hours filling out forms and giving statements. They took my fingerprints so they could compare them to anything found on the original documents. They asked me questions about Brenda's character, her financial situation, her relationship with Kevin. I answered everything as honestly as I could, even the parts that made me look like a fool for not seeing this coming. Did your daughter ever express any interest in the value of your property? Not directly. But her husband once said it would go for $400,000 in this market. That was at Thanksgiving dinner. Did you ever discuss your estate plans with her? Years ago, I told her the house would go to her when I died. I thought that would be enough. The detective taking my statement, a young woman named Rodriguez, who couldn't have been more than 30, looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Mrs. Harper, in cases like this, we often find that the perpetrator has been planning for a while. Small steps, building toward the bigger crime. Can you think of anything your daughter did in the past few years that seemed unusual at the time? I thought about it. Really thought. She asked me for my spare key about 6 months ago. Said she'd lost hers and needed a new one cut. I didn't think anything of it. Anything else? Last Christmas, she asked if I still kept my important papers in the desk in the spare bedroom. The way she asked, it felt odd. Like she already knew the answer and was just checking. Rodriguez wrote something down. And the power of attorney. Did she ever use it before this? Once. Last year, there was a billing issue with my property tax. She called the county and sorted it out. I was grateful at the time. So she had practice, Rodriguez said, more to herself than to me. She knew how the system worked. I sat there in that uncomfortable plastic chair, under those harsh fluorescent lights, and tried to figure out where I'd gone wrong. Was there a moment I should have seen this coming? A sign I'd missed? Some conversation where Brenda had revealed who she really was, and I'd been too blind or too stubborn to notice? Maybe. Probably. But you can't live your whole life looking for betrayal around every corner. If you do that, you end up alone, suspicious of everyone, trusting no one. I'd rather be fooled by someone I loved than spend my years waiting for the knife in my back. Still, it would have been nice to see the knife coming. They arrested Brenda that evening. Dale called me himself to tell me. She wasn't at home when we got there, he said. She was at a restaurant with her husband, having dinner like nothing was wrong. When we walked in and told her why we were there, she didn't even put down her fork. I could picture it. Brenda, perfectly composed, dabbing her mouth with a napkin before standing up to be handcuffed. She'd always been good at keeping her emotions off her face. Even as a child, she could lie without blinking. What did she say? Not much. She asked for a lawyer, said the whole thing was a misunderstanding. Then she saw me and said, "Tell my mother she's making a huge mistake." That sounds like her. She'll be arraigned tomorrow morning. Given the evidence, I don't think she'll make bail. The judge doesn't look kindly on elder fraud. Elder fraud. I'd spent 38 years taking care of people in hospitals, and now I was the victim of elder fraud. The words felt foreign, like they belonged to someone else's story. What about the house? I asked. The sale is being contested. Since the deed was fraudulent, the title company is going to have to unwind the whole thing. It might take a few weeks, but you should be able to move back in soon. In the meantime, is there somewhere you can stay? I thought about it. Janet was still in Tampa. I could go back there, but the thought of getting on another plane made my bones ache. There was Marcus, but his apartment was tiny. Barely room for one person, let alone two. "I'll figure something out," I said. You know, Loretta, the county has resources for situations like this. Emergency housing, victim services. I can connect you with someone. Dale, I appreciate it. But I've been taking care of myself for 74 years. I'm not about to stop now. He chuckled softly. I figured you'd say that. But the offer stands. After he hung up, I sat in the station lobby and tried to figure out my next move. My purse had my wallet, my phone, my medications. My suitcase was still sitting on my driveway. Everything else, my clothes, my photo albums, my husband's fishing trophies, was locked inside a house I couldn't enter. Mary Chen had offered to let me sleep at her place, but I didn't want charity. I wanted my own bed, my own pillow, my own walls around me. The young couple, I'd learned their names were Jennifer and Tom, had approached me before they left. Jennifer was still red-eyed from crying, but she'd stopped long enough to say something that surprised me. "Mrs. Harper, we're so sorry this happened to you. We had no idea. We just saw a house we loved and wanted to start our family there. We never meant to take anything from anyone." "I know," I told her. "And I'm sorry too. You deserved better than this." Tom had handed me a business card. "We're staying at the Comfort Inn on Route 9 until this gets sorted out. If there's anything we can do, testify, provide documents, whatever, please let us know. We want to help." I'd put the card in my purse, not expecting to use it. But now, sitting in the station lobby with nowhere to go, I pulled it out and looked at it. Tom Brennan, project manager. Some company I'd never heard of. I didn't call him. Instead, I called a number I'd had memorized for 40 years. "Henderson's Motel?" a voice answered. "You need a room?" "It's Loretta Harper. Is that you, Gary?" A pause. "Mrs. Harper, the nurse from the hospital?" "That's me. I need a room for a few nights, maybe longer, whatever you've got." "Mrs. Harper, I haven't seen you since you stitched up my son after that car accident. He still has the scar, you know. Shows it off at parties." "I remember. Nice kid. Terrible driver." Gary laughed. "He's better now. Got a room for you, Mrs. Harper. Number 7, first floor, easy access. I'll leave the key at the desk and don't worry about paying tonight. We can sort that out tomorrow." "Gary, I can pay." "I know you can, but after what you did for my boy, you could stay here free for a month and we'd still be in your debt. Take the room, get some rest. You sound tired." I was tired. Bone-deep tired, the kind that sleep doesn't fix because it's not really about sleep. It's about carrying too much for too long and finally putting some of it down. "Thank you, Gary." "Anytime, Mrs. Harper. Anytime." Henderson's Motel hadn't changed much since the last time I'd been there, which was probably 20 years ago. Same brown carpet, same floral bedspreads, same smell of industrial cleaner trying to mask something older and mustier underneath. But the sheets were clean, the shower worked, and the door had a lock that I was in full control of. That was enough. The room was small. A bed, a dresser, a television that probably hadn't been updated since the Clinton administration, and a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. But after 3 weeks of uncertainty, of not knowing where I'd sleep or when I'd get my life back, it felt like a palace, my own space, my own door, my own lock. I sat on the edge of the bed and took my blood pressure pill with water from a plastic cup that smelled faintly of bleach. Then I called Janet in Tampa. "Loretta, are you home? How was the flight?" "The flight was fine. Everything else is a disaster." I told her the whole story, the sold sign, the new locks, the strangers in my living room, the chainsaw, the sheriff, the arrest. Janet was quiet for a long time. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. "I never liked Brenda." "What?" "I know she's your daughter, and I know you love her, but I never liked her. Even when she was young, there was something calculating about her. Like she was always figuring out what she could get from people." "Why didn't you ever say anything?" What was I supposed to say? "Hey, Loretta, I think your kid might be a con artist." You would have stopped talking to me. She was probably right. I would have defended Brenda. I would have made excuses. That's what mothers do. We protect our children, even when they don't deserve protecting, even when the evidence is staring us in the face. "What are you going to do now?" Janet asked. "Get my house back, press charges, rewrite my will." "Good. And Loretta? When this is over, come back to Tampa. Stay for a real visit, not just 2 weeks. We'll sit on my balcony and drink wine and talk about all the ways our kids have disappointed us." I laughed, even though nothing was funny. Deal. After I hung up, I lay back on the scratchy motel bedspread and stared at the ceiling. There was a water stain in the corner, shaped like a question mark. Fitting, I thought. My whole life had become a question mark. I thought about Brenda, not the woman who'd stolen my house, but the baby who couldn't sleep unless I walked that specific pattern through our apartment. The toddler who used to bring me dandelions from the backyard, clutching them in her sweaty fist like they were precious gems. The teenager who slammed doors and screamed that she hated me, then crawled into my bed at midnight because she'd had a nightmare. Where did that girl go? When did she turn into someone who could look at her own mother and see nothing but dollar signs? I didn't have answers. Maybe I never would. Maybe some questions don't have answers, and you just have to learn to live with the asking. The arraignment was the next morning. I wasn't required to be there, but I went anyway. I wanted to see her face. The courtroom was small, not like the ones on television. Plastic chairs instead of wooden benches. Fluorescent lights that made everyone look slightly ill. A judge who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, flipping through papers with the bored efficiency of someone who's seen it all before. Brenda was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit. Her hair was flat, her makeup gone, her expression set in that careful blankness she'd perfected over the years. When she saw me sitting in the back row, something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or anger. But it was gone so fast I might have imagined it. The charges were read out loud. Forgery, fraud, elder abuse. Each word landed like a stone in the silent room. Her lawyer, a man in an expensive suit who looked annoyed to be there, entered a plea of not guilty and requested bail. The prosecutor argued against it, citing the amount of money involved and the risk of flight. The judge took about 30 seconds to make up his mind. Bail is set at $250,000. The defendant will surrender her passport and remain within county limits. Next case. Brenda's face went white. $250,000. She didn't have that kind of money. Not unless she'd already spent my $340,000 on something I didn't know about. As they let her out, she turned and looked at me one more time. This time, I didn't look away. "You're making a mistake, Mom," she said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "I was trying to help you. You'll see." I didn't respond. What was there to say? She'd had 49 years to learn how to talk to me like a daughter. If she hadn't figured it out by now, nothing I said was going to change that. Kevin was waiting outside the courtroom. He looked terrible, unshaven, rumpled, like he'd slept in his clothes. When he saw me, he started walking toward me, then stopped, unsure. "Mrs. Harper," he said, "Loretta, I need you to know, I didn't know, about the forgery. She told me you'd agreed to sell. She said you wanted to be closer to us." I never thought she'd... He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "You never thought she'd what, Kevin? Lie? Steal? Commit a felony to pay for your boat?" He flinched. "There is no boat. There was never going to be a boat. The business, it's gone. We're broke. Everything we had went into trying to save it, and it wasn't enough. Brenda was desperate. I should have seen it. I should have stopped her." I studied his face, looking for the lie. But I didn't see one. Just a tired, scared man who'd hitched his wagon to the wrong horse and was now watching everything fall apart. "That's not an excuse," I said. "I know. And it doesn't make it better. I know." We stood there in the hallway, two people who'd been family for almost 30 years and were now strangers connected only by a crime and a shared sense of failure. "I'm filing for divorce," Kevin said quietly. "I've already talked to a lawyer. Whatever assets we have left, I'll make sure you're paid back first. It won't be much, but it's something." I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak. He turned and walked away, his shoulders hunched, his footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. I watched him go and felt something I didn't expect. Pity. Not forgiveness, not understanding, just pity. For a man who'd wanted too much and ended up with nothing. Getting my house back took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of lawyers and paperwork and phone calls and meetings with the title company, who were very apologetic and very slow. 3 weeks of living at Henderson's Motel, eating takeout from the diner next door, wearing the same 3 outfits I'd managed to buy at the thrift store when it became clear I wasn't getting into my house anytime soon. Tom and Jennifer, the young couple, turned out to be genuinely good people. They testified at the preliminary hearing, provided all their documentation, and made it clear they had no interest in keeping a house that wasn't rightfully theirs. The title company refunded their down payment, and last I heard, they'd found another place. Smaller, but without any forged signatures attached to it. On the day I finally got my keys back, Dale Hutchins drove me to the house himself. "Thought you might want some company," he said, "in case there's anything unexpected." I appreciated that. I wasn't sure what I'd find inside. The young couple had only been there for a few days before everything fell apart, but they'd started moving their things in. I didn't know what was mine anymore and what was theirs. The house looked the same from outside. Same white siding, same black shutters, same cracked third step that Walter always said he'd fix and never did. The sold sign was gone, replaced by nothing, just empty lawn where it used to be. I walked up the steps slowly, feeling each one under my feet. The new lock had been replaced with my old one, or a copy of it anyway. The key slid in smooth and easy, and the door swung open. Inside, it was chaos. Half-unpacked boxes everywhere, furniture pushed against walls, my things mixed with strangers' things in a jumble that made my head spin. But underneath the mess, it was still my house. Same wallpaper in the hallway. Same creaky floorboard in the kitchen. Same smell of old wood and lemon polish that I'd never been able to get rid of, no matter how many times I cleaned. I walked through each room, touching things, making sure they were real. The fishing trophies were still on the shelf, though someone had knocked one over and not bothered to pick it up. The photo albums were in a box by the front door, labeled "Donate," in handwriting that wasn't mine. My mother's quilt was folded on the couch, a coffee cup ring staining one corner. In the bedroom, the bed had been stripped, the sheets gone, the mattress bare. But Walter's side of the closet was still there. His shirts, his suits, the sweater I'd bought him for our 40th anniversary that he'd worn maybe twice. I pressed my face into one of the shirts and breathed in deep, but after 5 years, there was nothing left of him to smell. Just fabric and time. Dale stood in the doorway, giving me space but staying close. "You need anything?" he asked. I shook my head. Just time. Time to put things back where they belong. He nodded. "I'll be outside if you need me." I spent the rest of the day sorting through the wreckage. What was mine? What was theirs? What was broken beyond repair? The young couple had left behind a few things: a lamp, some kitchen utensils, a book about home renovation that they'd probably bought full of hope and now would never finish. I put their things in a box by the front door. I'd find a way to get it to them. They deserved at least that much. By evening, I'd made a dent in the chaos. My furniture was back in place, more or less. My books were on the shelves. My geraniums, the ones I'd rescued from the trash cans on that first terrible day, were lined up on the windowsill, looking ragged but alive. I sat on my couch, in my living room, in my house. And for the first time in 3 weeks, I cried. Not pretty crying, the kind you see in movies where a single tear rolls down someone's cheek. Real crying. The kind that makes your whole body shake. The kind that sounds more like choking than weeping. The kind that leaves you empty and wrung out like a dish rag someone twisted too hard. I cried for Walter, who should have been here to help me through this. I cried for the daughter I thought I had, the one who existed only in my imagination. I cried for the years I'd spent being careful, being responsible, being the one who held everything together, and how easily it had all been torn apart. When I was done, I went to the kitchen and made myself a cup of tea. Chamomile, the same kind I'd been drinking for 40 years. My hands were steadier now. The shaking had stopped. I looked around my kitchen. The counters I'd wiped down 10,000 times, the window where I used to watch Brenda play in the backyard, the hook by the door where Walter hung his keys every evening when he came home from work. All of it mine again. Not because anyone had given it to me, but because I'd taken it back. The next few weeks were about putting things in order. New locks on all the doors, even though the old lock had been restored. A security system with cameras that sent alerts to my phone. A meeting with a lawyer to make sure my power of attorney was revoked and couldn't be used again without my explicit, witnessed, notarized consent. I also hired someone to go through all my financial records. A forensic accountant, they called her. A small woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude who reminded me of the head nurse from my early years at the hospital. She found 3 other accounts Brenda had accessed over the past 2 years. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger alarms. $50 here, $100 there, testing the waters before the big theft. The total came to just over $4,000. $4,000. My daughter had been stealing from me in increments for 2 years, and I never noticed. Because I trusted her. Because I didn't check. The accountant also found that Kevin's business had been failing for longer than he'd admitted. 3 years of losses, mounting debts, a second mortgage on their house that they'd stopped paying 6 months ago. They were drowning, and instead of asking for help, they'd decided to steal my life raft. People do desperate things when they're scared, the accountant said, closing her laptop. It doesn't excuse it, but it explains it. I know, I said, but understanding why someone hurt you doesn't make it hurt less. She nodded, a small movement that said more than words could. No, it doesn't. The trial took 6 months. Brenda's lawyer tried every trick in the book, claiming I'd given verbal consent, claiming I was mentally incompetent, claiming the signature was real and the experts were wrong. None of it worked. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They came back with guilty verdicts on all counts. At sentencing, the judge asked if I wanted to make a statement. I'd written something out, but when I stood up, the words I'd planned didn't feel right anymore. Your Honor, I said, that woman is my daughter. I raised her. I fed her, clothed her, loved her. I would have done anything for her. All she had to do was ask. I looked at Brenda, sitting at the defense table in her prison orange, her face carefully blank. She didn't ask. She took. And not just money or property. She took my trust. She took my peace of mind. She took the relationship we could have had if she'd just been honest with me. The judge nodded, waiting for me to continue. I don't want her to go to prison, I said. The words surprised me even as I said them, but I knew they were true, not because she doesn't deserve it, but because prison won't fix what's broken in her. She needs help, real help, the kind you can't get behind bars. Brenda's eyes widened. I don't think she'd expected that. But, I continued, she also needs to understand that actions have consequences. What she did was wrong. Not just illegal, wrong. Morally, spiritually, humanly wrong. And I hope someday she figures out how to live with that. I sat down. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from saying things I'd carried for months, finally letting them out into the air where they could stop weighing me down. The judge considered everything for a long moment. Then he passed sentence, 18 months of probation, 200 hours of community service, and mandatory counseling for financial crimes. No jail time, but a felony on her record that would follow her forever. Brenda looked at me as the bailiff led her away. Not with gratitude, I didn't expect gratitude, but with something I couldn't quite identify. Confusion, maybe, or the beginning of understanding. I didn't stay to find out. I walked out of that courtroom and into the sunshine, and I didn't look back. There were reporters outside, a few of them anyway. Local news mostly. Elderly woman recovers home after daughter's forgery scheme. I could already see the headlines. One of them tried to get a statement from me, shoving a microphone in my face as I walked down the courthouse steps. "Mrs. Harper, how do you feel about your daughter's sentence? Do you think it was fair?" I stopped and looked at her. A young woman, probably not much older than Brenda had been when she graduated college. Hungry for a story, for a quote she could use on the evening news. "Fair?" I repeated. "My daughter stole my house and my trust. No sentence is going to make that fair. But the judge was merciful, and I'm grateful for that. Do you think you'll ever forgive her?" I considered the question. It wasn't as simple as yes or no. "Forgiveness isn't something you do all at once," I said finally. "It's something you work on, day by day, for the rest of your life. Ask me again in 10 years. Then I walked away, leaving her standing there with her microphone and her unanswered questions. Marcus came over that Sunday, just like I'd asked. He brought flowers, yellow roses, my favorite, and a bottle of wine that I had no intention of drinking but appreciated anyway. We sat on the porch, watching the sunset turn the sky orange and pink. The neighborhood was quiet. Just a few kids riding bikes in the distance and a dog barking somewhere down the block. "Grandma," Marcus said, "I'm so sorry for everything. I should have known something was wrong. I should have called you. You believed your mother. That's not a crime. It feels like one." I reached over and patted his hand. "Your mother made her choices. You're not responsible for them. The only person responsible for Brenda's actions is Brenda." He was quiet for a while, turning the wine glass in his hands without drinking from it. "Dad filed for divorce," he said finally. "Did you know?" "I heard. He's been trying to call me. I haven't picked up. I don't know what to say to him. That's up to you. But Kevin didn't know about the forgery. He's guilty of a lot of things. Poor judgment, wishful thinking, not asking enough questions. But he didn't know what your mother was planning." Marcus nodded slowly. "She fooled everyone." "Yes." She did. The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a wash of purple and gold. I thought about all the sunsets I'd watched from this porch, all the seasons that had come and gone while I sat in this chair, all the years I'd spent building a life in this house. "I rewrote my will," I said. Marcus looked up. "You don't have to tell me. I want to. Everything goes to you, the house, the savings, everything. Your mother was supposed to inherit it all, but she decided to take it early without asking. So now she gets nothing." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "That's fair." "It's not about fair. It's about trust. You've never given me a reason to doubt you." "Your mother gave me 340,000 reasons." He almost smiled at that. "Almost. There's one thing I'm leaving her," I continued. "Your grandfather's photograph. The one she put in the closet because she said it was depressing. I want her to have it. Maybe looking at his face will remind her what she threw away." Marcus set down his wine glass and put his arm around me. We sat there together, watching the last light fade from the sky, not talking, just breathing. "I love you, Grandma," he said finally. "I love you too, baby." 6 months later, I was sitting on my porch when a car I didn't recognize pulled into the driveway. For a moment, my heart jumped. Old habits die hard, I guess. But then the door opened, and a woman stepped out that I did recognize. Brenda. She looked different. Thinner, older, like the past year had added 10 years to her face. She was wearing clothes I'd never seen before. Simple things. Nothing designer. Her hair was shorter, pulled back in a way that made her look both younger and more tired. She walked up the path slowly, like she wasn't sure she was welcome. She wasn't, not entirely. But I didn't tell her to leave. "Mom," she said when she reached the porch steps. "Can we talk?" I gestured to the empty chair beside me. She sat down carefully, keeping distance between us. For a long time, neither of us said anything. The silence stretched out, filled with all the things that had happened and all the things that couldn't be unsaid. Finally, Brenda spoke. "I've been in counseling." Part of my sentence. 3 times a week for 6 months. She stared at her hands, clasped in her lap. The therapist asked me why I did it. Not the how. She didn't care about the mechanics. She wanted to know why. I waited. I told her I needed the money. That Kevin's business was failing, that we were going to lose everything, that I was desperate. She paused. She said that was a reason, but not the why. She made me dig deeper. "And what did you find?" Brenda looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw something real in her eyes. Not the carefully constructed mask she usually wore. Something raw and uncomfortable. "I found out I was angry at you. I've been angry at you my whole life, and I didn't even know it." That surprised me. I'd expected a lot of things from this conversation, but not that. Angry about what? About Dad dying. About you being so strong afterward. Just moving on. Keeping the house perfect. Keeping your life together while I was falling apart. About you always being okay no matter what happened, while I couldn't hold anything together for more than 5 minutes. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I was jealous, Mom. Of your house. Your life. Your stability. Everything I tried to build kept crumbling, and there you were, 74 years old, still standing. It wasn't fair." I sat with that for a moment. Let it settle. "Brenda," I said slowly, "I wasn't okay after your father died. I just didn't show it. I cried every night for 2 years. I couldn't sleep in our bedroom for 6 months. I thought about selling this house 100 times because every corner reminded me of him." "Then why didn't you?" "Because running away doesn't fix anything. Because the memories in this house are all I have left of 40 years of marriage. Because grief isn't something you escape. It's something you learn to carry." She was crying now. Really crying. The way she used to cry as a teenager when she'd realized she'd done something wrong and didn't know how to fix it. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know that I understand now. I understand what I did, and I understand why, and I hate myself for it. I didn't reach for her. I wasn't ready for that, but I didn't push her away either. Understanding is a start," I said. "But it's not enough." "I know. What are you going to do now?" She took a shaky breath. "I got a job. Admin work at a nonprofit. It doesn't pay much, but it's honest. Kevin and I are divorced. I'm living in a small apartment on the south side. I'm trying to, I don't know, be better, be different. That's good. I don't expect you to trust me again. I don't expect anything. I just wanted to see you. To tell you I'm sorry. To let you know that what you said at the sentencing about wanting me to get help, it mattered. It made a difference. I thought about that. About all the things I could say. All the ways I could respond. About forgiveness and its limits. About love and its complications. About mothers and daughters and the bridges that burn between them. You can't deed away what isn't yours, I said finally. That was always true. You just didn't want to hear it." She nodded. "I'm not going to forget what you did, but I'm not going to spend the rest of my life holding on to it either. That would hurt me more than it hurts you." "So, what does that mean?" I looked at my daughter, this complicated, difficult, broken woman I'd brought into the world and loved despite everything. "It means you can call me sometimes. It means if you keep going to counseling, keep doing the work, keep trying to be better, maybe someday we can have coffee. Not here. Somewhere neutral. And we can see where things go from there." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was something smaller and more fragile. A possibility, nothing more. Brenda understood. She nodded, stood up, and walked back to her car without trying to hug me or push for more than I'd offered. At the edge of the driveway, she turned. "Thank you, Mom." I didn't answer. I just watched her drive away, then sat on my porch for a long time, thinking about everything and nothing, watching the world go by. I'm still in my house. Still sitting on my porch every evening, watching the sunset. Still maintaining that chainsaw every spring, even though I haven't used it for anything but making noise. Marcus comes by most Sundays. We have pot roast, talk about his work, watch old movies on the television. He's a good kid. A good man, I should say. He's 27 now, not a kid anymore. But grandmothers are allowed to call their grandchildren kids no matter how old they get. Brenda and I have had coffee twice. It's awkward and strange and nothing like what we had before. But it's something. A thin thread connecting us, fragile but present. I don't know if it will ever be more than that. Maybe it doesn't need to be. The young couple, Tom and Jennifer, sent me a Christmas card last year. They found a house, got pregnant, named the baby after Jennifer's grandmother. They're doing fine. Better than fine. They sent a photo. The three of them in front of their new place, smiling like people who've learned that happiness isn't about the house you live in, but the life you build inside it. I keep that photo on my refrigerator next to the one of Walter and me on our wedding day. Two different kinds of hope, separated by 50 years. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't gone to Tampa. If I'd been home when Brenda made her move. Would I have caught her in the act? Would she have gone through with it if I was there to stop her? I don't know, and it doesn't matter. What matters is what happened next. The choices I made, the stand I took, the life I reclaimed. I keep thinking about all those other women out there. The ones who gave everything to their kids and got nothing back but empty promises and extended hands. The ones who signed papers they didn't understand because their children told them not to worry. The ones sitting in houses that feel less and less like theirs every day, wondering if it's too late to change things. It's not too late. It's never too late. I was 74 when my daughter sold my house out from under me. 74 when I stood on my own driveway with a chainsaw, making enough noise to shake the whole neighborhood awake. 74 when I looked a sheriff in the eye and said, "This is my house and I want it back." If I can do that at 74, you can do it too. Whatever age you are, whatever situation you're in, whatever they've taken from you or tried to take, you can fight back. Not with violence, not with anger, just with truth. Just with the steady, stubborn refusal to disappear. I keep the chainsaw in the garage, right where Walter left it. Every spring I change the oil, check the chain, make sure it's ready to run. Not because I expect to need it again, but because it reminds me of something important. Sometimes the only way to be heard is to make some noise, and I've never been afraid of making noise. If you're reading this and any of it sounds familiar, if you've got a child who looks at you and sees a checkbook instead of a person, if you've signed papers you didn't understand, if you're sitting in a house that used to feel like yours and now feels like something else, I want to hear from you. Not because misery loves company, because strength does. We spend so much of our lives being quiet, being polite, being the ones who smooth things over and keep the peace. And sometimes that's the right thing to do. But sometimes you have to make noise. Sometimes you have to stand in your own driveway with your own chainsaw and let the whole world know that you're still here, still standing, still refusing to be pushed aside. My daughter thought I was already in the ground. I wasn't even cold yet, and I'm not planning on getting cold anytime soon. That chainsaw is still in my garage, oiled, sharpened, ready to go. Sometimes I go out there just to look at it, to remember the day I refused to be quiet. It's not a weapon. It's a reminder that even a 74-year-old woman can make enough noise to change her own story. My name is Loretta Harper. I've been a wife, a mother, a nurse, a grandmother. I've held hands in delivery rooms and deathbeds. I've seen the best of people and the worst of them, sometimes in the same person, sometimes in the same moment. And I'm still here, still standing, still refusing to be sold off like furniture nobody wants anymore.
Loretta didn't swing that chainsaw at anyone. She didn't have to. She just made enough noise to be heard. Her daughter thought she was dealing with a confused old lady who'd sign whatever was put in front of her and believe whatever she was told. Turned out, she was dealing with a woman who knows how to file a police report and maintain a two-stroke engine. Big difference. If any part of Loretta's story sounds familiar to you, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment. Share your story. Not because misery loves company, because strength does.